Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and show you the impact of the McGovern-Fraser reforms based on what you just saw in the PowerPoint presentation. And if you haven't looked at that, you really want to go back and see it, because it's going to be extremely helpful in understanding what I'm talking about, but more importantly, why I'm talking about it. And I want to talk about the way that the McGovern-Fraser reforms have impacted on who our leaders are. So I'm actually going to draw here to go ahead and show you a graph. Some people are good with graphs, some people not so much. So if you don't get this will be one of the questions that you can go ahead and you can email me, send a message to me and ask me to explain this in more detail, or when we get together, you can ask me about it as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a graph that's going to sort of show you who the voters are, both in the general election and in the primary elections. Now remember, I already showed you a graph before. It was called a histogram. That was the one with the little bars that showed that most voters are moderates. What I'm going to show you is what's called a distribution. All it is the same thing as that histogram, but it sort of smooths everything out. Instead of having little bars, it has lines. So let me just show you what I'm talking about. So we're going to start with the Democrats over here. And then we're going to imagine that we have a line all the way across here. This is sort of like on a single dimension again. I'm going to bring it all the way across over here. And our Republicans are going to be over there. Now, if we were going to go ahead and we were going to show everybody who votes in a primary election, as I said before, this is what it would wind up looking like. Right? If you notice, you see, there's only a few people over here who are extremely conservative. These are going to be the people who are extremely conservative. Right? Over here, these are the people who are extremely liberal. And then we have everybody else who's in between. And right here is going to be people who are moderate. These people are liberal. These people are conservative. And then we have people who are somewhat conservative and somewhat liberal. And I'm not sure how to draw that. Somewhat liberal, is that correct? Hell yeah. And somewhat conservative. So these are somewhat conservative, somewhat liberal, moderates, conservatives, extremely conservative, liberal, and extremely liberal. Okay, so that's our drawing. It's not a nice drawing, but it's a drawing and it shows basically what we got here. And these are all our voters. And what it's showing is that there's only a few people who are extremely liberal and a few people who are extremely conservative, but most people are around the center. Now, in a general election, where would the median voter be? Well, the median voter is the person who's in the center of this distribution. The median voter would be right there, meaning that there's an equal number of people on this side who are more liberal than the median voter, and an equal number of people who are more conservative on the side that I'm standing. Right? That's what makes that person the median voter. There are an equal number of people who are more liberal and an equal number of people who are more conservative. That's in the general election. But here's the key. In primary elections, we have basically two kinds of primary elections. We have closed primaries, and then we have open. My wife is watching, by the way. I'm actually in the living room. I should just show you this, but I'm in the living room and I have plastic on my wall. I'm actually drawing on my living room wall. Yes, that's true. So in any case, we have two kinds of primaries. We have closed primaries and we have open primaries. In a closed primary, what that means is only people who are members of the party can vote. So in a Democratic closed primary, only Democrats can vote. If you're a Republican and you walk in and you say, I want to vote in the primary, they'll say, are you a Democrat? You say, no. They say, take a hike. If you say, I'm not a Republican, I'm an independent, I want to vote in the Democratic primary, they'll say, take a hike. You can't. In a closed primary, only party members can vote. So if I were to draw the Democratic primary and who votes in a Democratic primary, this is what it would look like. Now, what does that mean? What does that show? That most of the people who vote in a Democratic primary are people who are extremely liberal, somewhat liberal, and maybe there are a few people who are moderates, but not very many people. Like I told you, the only people who vote in primaries are people who are really into politics. People can be really, really liberal. They can be intensely liberal, but there aren't very many people who are intensely moderate. We don't have intense moderates. So people who are moderates oftentimes don't get that involved. But in a closed primary, that's what it would look like. Now, when you're looking at this, and this is again the line, this is the distribution, where's the median voter? Where's the median in this? Well, it would probably be somewhere right around there. In a closed Democratic primary, so in a closed Democratic primary, that is around where the median voter is going to be. Somebody who's pretty liberal. Now there's also something called an open primary. In an open primary, what happens is party members and independents are allowed to vote. Now independents typically are not very strong ideologically. They tend not to be either extremely liberal or extremely conservative. Independents tend to be more moderate. So in an open primary, this was just people who vote in a closed primary. These are just Democrats, most of whom are fairly extreme. In an open primary, it would also include people who are independents. And independents, as I said, are more moderate than Democrats as a whole. So if I were going to add them to this distribution to get an idea of who votes in an open primary, it would look something like this. See this little extra, this extra thing over here? These are my independents. Over here, these are the registered Democrats. So the people who are underneath this area, these are the Democrats that tend to be extreme. Over here, these are the independents that tend to be more moderate. So now in an open primary, this is what our distribution looks like. We've got our independents and we've got our Democrats together. And now if you go ahead and you look for the median voter now, the median voter is going to be somewhere like that. So this is in an open Democratic primary. That's a close, I should actually turn that around, hold on. This is a closed Democratic primary. That's a closed Democratic primary. That's an open Democratic primary. But what you can see again is the median voter is right here. Now again, why is the median voter, did it move in this direction? Well, the reason the median voter moved in that direction is because now you have all these people who are independents who are voting, and they're not as liberal as the people who vote in a Democratic primary. The same thing is true on the Republican side. In a Republican primary, this is what a closed Republican primary would look like, right? This is a closed Republican primary. The people who vote in a closed Republican primary tend to be very conservative, more extreme. But they also have, the median voter in a Republican closed primary is going to be somewhere around here. So here what we have is a closed Republican primary. Now, if the Republicans have an open primary, then independents are going to participate. And once again, when the independents participate, they're going to move this distribution over. And in an open Republican primary, that's where the median voter is going to be for the open Republican primary. Now, that looks all very confusing drawings, right? A little bit crazy, a little bit of a mishmash. But actually, in this drawing is the answer to the question, why are our leaders ideologically extreme when most people are moderates? Remember what I said before. To win an election, you have to go and try and win the median voter. Well, which kind of candidate, if we're talking about this closed Democratic primary right here, this closed Democratic primary, what kind of candidate is going to win? If this is the median voter, if the median voter is somebody who's kind of liberal, is a moderate Democrat going to ever win? No, they're going to hardly get any votes. What about somebody who's somewhat liberal? No, because the median voter isn't there. In order to win a Democratic primary, you need to be pretty liberal. So a liberal is going to win in a Democratic primary. What about in the Republican closed primary? In a Republican closed primary, the median voter, this is the Republican closed primary here. That's this one here. The median voter is right here. So the kind of candidate that's going to win is a moderate going to win in a Republican closed primary? Definitely not. Somebody who's conservative is going to win in a Republican closed primary. Now, in an open primary, what's going to happen is more moderate candidates, people who aren't quite as extreme, are going to win. In an open Democratic primary, this is our median voter. And somebody who's sort of somewhat liberal is going to win that primary. Same thing over here in the Republican open primary. Somebody who's somewhat conservative is going to win in the Republican open primary. Now here's something important to keep in mind. Most states have closed primaries. Most states have closed primaries. And so this creates a problem. And we'll come back to this in the next video.